Welcome back to Strong, everybody. I'm so excited to bring another incredible guest. Today, we are zooming around the world and meeting with Kat, who is currently living in Australia. It is so great to have you with us today, Kat. Thank you for joining.
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
What is it like right now in Australia? I know it's summertime approaching here in Dubai. It's nice and warm, but still not too warm to be getting out. What about you? What's it like for you?
Yeah, well, we're the opposite end of the spectrum. So it's just become autumn, just time to get the winter woolies out and crank the heating up a little bit. So I'm in Melbourne, and Melbourne does have 4 seasons, which is contrary to a lot of people's opinion and belief. So yeah, we definitely have to get kind of winter clothes and heating, and there's skiing available soon, which will be fun. But it's a good time of year. I love autumn.
Okay, Kat, there's so much to talk about. I love talking about people and listening to them share the story of their lives. It's such an exciting conversation for me to be part of. And I never really know where to begin, but for some reason today, I think I would really like to start with your role as mom. What's it like to be the mother of a 2.5 little baby girl?
Oh, look, it's amazing, and it's insane, and it's terrifying, and it's kind of everything in between. So I think that on a daily basis, really from minute to minute, I kind of have all of those emotions. So she's absolutely incredible. She's the light of my life. She's a little character. She is the reason that I get up every day and fight and battle. And she's my absolute inspiration. And she doesn't sleep very much. So there's that. But no, she's, I love being a mum. I became a mum quite late in life. And I feel that for me that was absolutely the way that it should have been. And I think that I'm probably a better mum because of that.
I love that you're bringing this up. Very often working mothers have that sense of guilt because they're working and they feel like they should be doing more of the mother role. But then when they're not at work and they're being mom, they really miss being at work. What's that like for you, having that dual role?
Yeah, look, I completely resonate. So for me, I stayed home with her for the first 8 or so months of her life. And that bonding time was really important for me. And it was incredible. But then there was a big part of me that was really desperate to get back to work and I guess find my identity again. Because I'm sure you'll know as a mum, like you're really torn. So you're absolutely passionate about your children and their well-being, but you're also, you don't want to lose yourself. And I think it's really important to be a better mum to actually maintain your identity in some way. So for me, that related to going back to work and feeling that I guess I'm making a better future for her, but also as a role model.
Do you find that people in your community, people in your friendship circles were supportive of that choice, or did you find yourself having to justify why you wanted to go back to work?
I never really had that battle. I think that the group of friends that I live here with in Melbourne are kind of in exactly the same space. And, I think really, from a financial perspective, it's quite difficult to kind of maintain a lifestyle just on one salary. It's quite an expensive place to live in Melbourne. But I think that it's just the norm here, really. I think if I've had any people kind of question that, it's probably from a slightly older generation. Not so much peers around my own age and going through similar things.
How do you think that affects the choices that you make when you are having these conversations with, our elders or role models, women who you would look up to, and having to justify the reasons for wanting to work, and also almost kind of clarify that our children will still be okay if mom goes to work. Financial reasons, as you said, and also well-being are really very important. How do you find that those conversations shape how you feel about what you do?
I actually think it's a really important subject, and the way that I would describe it is that I think I'm a role model. I'm a role model to my daughter. And for me, we're not living in, in an age where, for example, my mum's generation, it would have been less likely that she would have gone out to work. We're in a modern society here in Melbourne, and as a direct result of that, I think it's really important that she understands the value of working hard, but also to achieve your goals and to really have your own independence and your own identity, as I've touched on. And so I think to anyone that asked me, why am I doing that? It would be simple. It's because I want her to have an appreciation, to be able to become your own individual, to reach your potential, and to really just kind of go out there and just try and live your life and do something that you feel really passionate about.
That sounds, I resonate with everything you said. And I want to touch on the part that you mentioned about being a role model. You are a role model, not only for your daughter, but for anyone that you come in contact with. And I wholeheartedly believe that we are role models every day, whether we are actively aware of that or not. As a role model, why are you talking to me today? Why is it important for you to be sharing your story with us?
Oh, for so many reasons. And I think that it really all started with, so I had quite a difficult upbringing, not in a conventional way, maybe, but I think, and we may touch on this later, but I suffered with quite severe anxiety growing up as a child. And I think that I really had no direction. I had no real goals. I had the ability to have done anything I wanted, but I didn't apply myself, and I didn't apply myself because of my anxiety. And I think that it's not, don't get me wrong, my mum is the most incredible, strong woman in her own right, but she's of a different generation, and really mental health awareness didn't really exist in the way that it perhaps does now. And so I feel for my daughter that it's really important that she sees me getting up, going to work, applying myself, working hard, and really believing in myself and having the confidence that be the change that you want to be. And that's wholeheartedly how I feel about parenthood and as a mum, and as her role model, and really in the way that I try and live my life. Don't get me wrong, I'm no angel, but at the same time, I take parenthood really seriously, and that's probably why I left it as late as I did to have a family, because I'm probably a bit of a perfectionist, and I didn't want to undertake that journey until I really felt that I was in the right space to do it.
Kat, I see a strong, confident woman who's very ready to be talking about anxiety, motherhood, being a role model, and just being part of this human existence. What do you see when you look in the mirror?
Oh, I see none of those things. It's been an ongoing battle about how I perceive myself, and kind of the worry of how people perceive me. Now, that's been a lifelong journey, and I'm happy to say that it gets a lot easier. And I'm definitely coming to terms with some of that anxiety that I touched on. And I'm believing in myself, and I do feel far more confident than I ever have at any other stage of my life. But when I look at myself in the mirror, I see somebody that feels a lot of pain. Firstly, I suffer with chronic illness, and that's an ongoing battle. That's something that is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And there are days when I really don't feel that I'm up to it. But because of my daughter, I do feel that it gives me the extra push that I need to, I guess, I'm about to use the word succeed, but I don't know if that's quite the right word, because I wouldn't necessarily say that I've succeeded. I've survived, and I'll continue to survive. And the older I get, I feel the more confidence that I have to be able to apply my skills and do things that I'm passionate about. And I think you'll agree, when you're passionate about something, it stops becoming so difficult, because you're just really genuinely wanting to run towards those goals.
I completely agree. I do want to bring you back to something that you mentioned about, I don't see any of those things. And I want to normalize what that really is, because it's very often that we speak to men and women, and we see so many amazing, incredible features. And when we ask them that question, they don't see those things. How does that hold you back on those harder days? Because you're not able to see what we can see.
Like up until really recently, it's held me back massively. It's held me back academically, it's held me back professionally. And I think that it's really not until I gave birth to my daughter 2.5 years ago, I almost had to take a strong, hard look at myself and say, okay, I've wasted my life. I don't think I have completely wasted
No,
it, but I
I don't
don't
think
feel that
so.
I've lived, I don't feel that I've necessarily fulfilled my potential. But as again, you'll understand when you have children, it just changes everything, because suddenly going back to that role model ideal, you know, this is a person that's looking up to me, and I can't fail her, you know, I can't. So it's forced me, even on difficult days, to keep going, to believe in myself. And the point is, you don't always have good days, and that's okay. Like, it's okay to just get through and to survive, but it's the trying, it's the never giving up, and it's the fighting that is the important lesson. And I think that if you can kind of gain those skills, then, you know, there's really going to be no stopping you. Everyone has difficult things that happen in their life. It's absolutely about how you deal with them.
A lot, don't we? That it's okay not to be okay. But when we look at social media, we rarely see what not okay looks like. So take us through your eyes. What does not okay look like through your eyes?
So for me, not okay has many faces. I mean, it's about how you feel about yourself. It's about how you perceive the world. It's about whether your mental health is in a good enough place that you're able to get up and function in society. But for me, not okay is really not having the belief that you're able to achieve anything or have worth, or be in a position to, I guess, contribute in whatever that looks like. That to me is not okay. Lots of other not okays can be overcome, but that is a really difficult one. And once you start to slip down that road, that's quite a difficult hole to dig yourself out of.
Feel that those not okay days are really, really challenging, not just because they're not okay days, but also because, like you said, you've got a daughter watching and you're working so hard for her to see that you are okay. And I sometimes I think, are we doing ourselves justice and are we doing our children justice by talking to them and telling them, hey, look, it's not always going to be okay, and that is okay. But guess what? You're never going to see mom not okay because I don't want to frighten you. Do you
So
find that
yeah.
that makes it harder for you?
Yeah, but I'm also a realist, and I don't ever put that on her. So for me, a really important thing about raising my daughter is to be a realist, but to give her the tools that enable her to gain that resilience. So, you know, we spend quite a lot of time talking about her emotions, and I think that's a really healthy kind of set of early tools. So, you know, quite often she'll come down the stairs and say, "Oh, mummy, I'm sad today." And it's like, and that's okay. I don't want to give her the impression that it's not okay to be sad. It's absolutely okay to be sad. What's less okay is feeling that you can't talk about it. And that's really the lesson. That's the main lesson that I want her to take away.
Talk about your diagnosis with fibro. I hope I pronounced this properly. Please correct me if I don't. Fibromyalgia. Talk to us about what that is for those of us that might not be familiar with it, and how you were diagnosed. I know that you said it was late diagnosed and 18 months overdue.
Yeah, so I guess it's probably important to anyone that's watching to understand what that means. So fibromyalgia is it's classed as a chronic illness, and it's effectively it's a pain disorder where it's a neurological disorder where you're oversensitized to pain. So really the messages that my brain is sending to my body is kind of in fight or flight mode all the time. And as a result of that, it means that everything hurts. So muscle pain, nerve pain, bone pain, chronic fatigue. And I use the term brain fog, but happy to expand because that's not necessarily clear what that means. But it's really quite a debilitating illness. and requires me to pace on a regular basis just so that I can achieve kind of daily tasks. So yeah, it's an ongoing, it's an incurable illness. It's actually incredibly common. It's most common in women, but actually it's not uncommon for men to have it too. So I think something like 20% of men can also have fibromyalgia. And yeah, it's something it's actually taken me about 15 years to diagnose. So I began that everyone has different triggers, so it's important to make that clear. So for example, when I have some kind of cold or flu, a bit of a contentious thing to talk about at the moment in today's world, but that illness of feeling like you have the flu and the aches and pains, that's how I feel every day. But when I do get a cold or flu, it exacerbates those symptoms and it causes a flare up. And I could be out of action, sort of physically in bed, unable to kind of do anything from a couple of days to last year, quite a few months. So it's a difficult one because there's, as I say, there's no cure. There's lots of holistic approaches about how you can try and treat it. There's lots of meds, and everyone has these symptoms in slightly different ways. So there are no two people that have fibro that would experience the exact same things. Some people have more chronic fatigue, some people have more pain, and really it's a case of kind of trial and error over a long period of time to try and combat it and find ways to help with it, so that you can resume some kind of sense of normal life. So I've been really lucky in that I've been able to go back to work. Some people, it's far more severe and they're not able to work at all. It's sort of similar in symptoms to MS. So it's those kinds of sensations, but it's not a progressive disease. So that's a sort of slightly long-winded explanation of what fibromyalgia is. But I began to have symptoms, can often be triggered by trauma. It's quite a common reason that those symptoms would start to appear. And I got really sick. I did some traveling in India when I was in my 20s, the most amazing place. And when I got back, I managed to contract paratyphoid. And paratyphoid left me out of action for a little while. But then I noticed that for about 10 years afterwards, I just had these awful viral infections, or what I thought at the time were awful viral infections, or what I now believe were flare-ups. Went to see lots and lots of doctors, and sort of feel fairly gaslighted, and that the symptoms weren't really taken seriously. And I didn't really know any better and probably didn't really have the tools to advocate for myself. So I just believed and just thought, well, it's just as a result of having this illness, and carried on and just felt worse and worse. And then I got it to a point when it was under control and I could kind of resume life. But then when I had my daughter, it was quite a traumatic birth. So yeah, there was some, a couple of quite dicey moments where we thought we might lose her. And often, as I mentioned, traumatic events can trigger illness. And for me, although I'd already had the symptoms, it actually made the symptoms far worse. So it was really after that that I knew that I needed to seek more advice, be more persuasive, advocate much more for myself. And yeah, it was when she was about 18 months old that the diagnosis came through. And it was an incredible relief, actually, because I just thought I was going crazy. It's just, how can someone be sick this often? And it really did. I guess it battered my confidence to a point, because people couldn't understand why I was sick all the time. And it's invisible, it's not obvious. So you wouldn't look at me and think that I have a disability, but I do.
How does that show up in your life with anxiety, work, being a mom, having a partner?
It's it's been a struggle, because I think one of the hardest things about fibromyalgia, and I should say a large amount of other similar chronic illnesses, is that they are invisible. So you wouldn't look at me and think that I was sick, but inside the pain sometimes is, 9 out of 10, and it's really difficult to even stand in the kitchen and cook a meal. And the chronic fatigue that comes with those symptoms is so debilitating that even after having 12 hours of sleep, which I would add is not very often with a 2.5-year-old, even after that, it's not restorative. So you wake up feeling as though you've been hit by a truck every day. And it means that you just have to fight harder. So to do the things that I do, I'm lucky in that my symptoms are at a manageable level. And I want to make it really clear that the fact that I'm able to work doesn't take away from the people that can't, because I'm just lucky in that I have probably slightly milder symptoms. I've been able to overcome those. I had to take about 9 months off work, and I underwent some exercise physiology where I learned all about it, because I just believe wholeheartedly that if you're going to tackle something, you need to know everything there is to know, and come at it from every angle and really hard. So I spent really an intensive period of time last year understanding more about the illness, trying and failing in a lot of instances, different holistic treatments, different kinds of meds. But I'm at a place now where I guess it's manageable. I still have flares and I still have to be really careful not to trigger the symptoms. And so a lot of self-awareness is required, and just understanding what my limits are, and really listening to my body, which is quite a hard thing to do when you're a mum, because you don't always have the ability to kind of take that time out when you need to.
What would you say your limits are?
I know that if I don't pace myself properly, it's not about not doing everything. It's about not doing it all and rushing around and zooming around like I used to. So my limits would be if I've had a few consecutive awful nights sleep, maybe a couple of hours sleep, stressful day at work, maybe my daughter's sick at the same time, which happens a lot because she goes to daycare. Those are real signs that a big flare up could be coming on, and that's when I have to really try and take some time out where I can. And time out might just look like an hour in front of the TV with my feet up. If I'm lucky, it could be a day in bed. But yeah, when the flare happens, it's quite difficult to control it, and you just have to ride it out. So I'm a big believer of really listening to my body, and that's the number one, I guess, way to manage my symptoms, is to just know when my body feels like it's becoming too much and it's going over the edge, and just take a little bit of a step back and regroup.
So working with the youth, what I hear a lot is, it's not fair, I can't do this, or it's not fair that I have this condition, or it's not fair that I can't achieve what I want to because I'm struggling with, and they fill in the blank. When you hear people around you talking about how unfair life can be, and giving everyone the space and the credit to be able to have those moments, because I think everyone has those moments. But when you hear things like this and you think on your journey, how do you respond to that phrase, it's not fair?
Yeah, see, I've never been a big one to say that. I don't really feel that it's in my vocabulary. And look, everyone is absolutely entitled to feel that way. Of course they are. But for me, if I were to start getting into the it's not fair, then I think that it could potentially be a downward spiral from a mental health point of view. And I think that I'm a big believer in gratitude and being grateful for all of the things that we have, not looking at the things that we don't. And what I've proven to myself is that absolutely anything is possible. No matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, no matter what your background, it really is about belief, and it's about seeing the positives, seeing the things that make you happy, and going for them. And that doesn't have to be a big thing. It could be as simple as, I'm going to walk to the park today. And that in itself can just lift your spirits and get you out of the hump. So I'm not a it's not fair person. I don't think I ever have been. And I don't think that I will teach my daughter that if I can. Yeah, I think that there are just so many people worse off. So why on earth would I be dwelling on, being able to live a relatively normal life and feeling happy and having a lovely family? Like, I actually just feel really lucky.
And I think it's important that we allow people to be able to express that it's not fair, because that's how we show them that we're listening and we're not judging, isn't it? And I like how you talked about the strategies you use to make sure that you don't fall into that trap of it's not fair. And as mothers and educators and members of global communities, rather than telling the youth that's wrong, you shouldn't be saying this, what we can be doing is saying that's one perspective. But what if we look at all the blessings, or what if we look at the little milestones that you have achieved in your life, and teaching them how to stay resilient through those challenges? I know that you mentioned, find something significant in your life that you love and that you want to be doing. And that is a key to gratitude and happiness and all of those things that you've been mentioning to us today. What would you say if you had to pinpoint one part of your journey that brings you the greatest happiness? What would that be?
So there's the obvious answer of my daughter, of course, but I think the greatest point for me was allowing the baggage of my self-depreciation just to float away and actually believe in myself and realize that I might have some battles, I might have some fight on my hands, but actually that doesn't always have to mean that life ends. And in fact, that's opened doors for me. And if you're able to, I suppose, just look at it from a perspective that perhaps it doesn't have to mean the end of the world, you never know, like there is always hope. It doesn't matter what happens to you. It doesn't matter where you end up or how you've been treated or what you do. If you believe in yourself and you have hope, then you open yourself up for good things to happen. And for me, being diagnosed with fibromyalgia has actually led to so many exciting opportunities. I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you now, because your lovely team wouldn't have found my Instagram page and they wouldn't have sort of seen me and you wouldn't have approached me. So that's just one little example of how, whatever you do, whatever you have to overcome, you can make good things happen if you're open to it.
That's about the amazing work that you're doing.
Oh, look, I don't think it's amazing. So I decided to start an Instagram page shortly after being diagnosed, because I realized after doing lots of research that the chronic illness that I have, whilst there was lots of research and kind of quite boring papers around available that you could read all about it, there weren't really much in the way of support groups. There wasn't really a feeling that there were tools available. It was really all just kind of quite dry, boring med stuff, which I don't really understand. And I've always been quite a shy person. I'm an introvert. And I just had this brainwave moment. It's like, I actually need to write about this, because I knew that if I was feeling it, then somebody else would be as well. And I felt that it was quite an isolating place, to not really be connecting with other people going through similar things. So I decided, for right or wrong, that I would just put it out there. I would just open myself up, be entirely raw, completely honest about my day-to-day struggles, in the hope that other people that were reading might resonate, and then perhaps, if I'm lucky, it might help one or two people. And yeah, it's been life-changing, because it's opened up a part of me that I never thought I would be able to. I've always been fairly reserved and, as I mentioned, introverted. I'm an empath as well. So being an empath almost means that, when you open yourself up like that, the responsibility that you take on to kind of connect and really keep those relationships going with the people that get in touch with you can feel like a bit of a burden at times, because like I would hate that someone got in touch with me, for example, and I forgot to respond. Like, I find that really difficult to live with. So it's a lot of work. It's almost like another job doing my blog, but It's been a game changer, and it's been really helpful for me personally. And yeah, I would like it to grow, and there's some ideas in the pipeline of how that could expand and become a bigger entity. So that's something that I'm working on at the moment.
And how can we find you on your social channel?
So I'm on Instagram. My handle's at Fabulous Fibro Mum. I'm also on Facebook. And yeah, like I'm just open. Like I spend a lot of my time messaging all of the lovely people that get in touch with me. And so anyone out there that's going through anything similar, I'd be so happy to hear from you.
Kat, just before we say goodbye, if I can take you back to one of the things that you mentioned right at the beginning is working on your anxiety, and then you talked to us about having fibro. Oh my goodness, I always say that wrong.
Fibro is
perfect. And fibromyalgia. And here I'm watching you, and I know that you said you don't see it, but you described yourself as an introvert, and you just come across as extremely confident. Definitely not what I would perceive to be as someone who was an introvert, or I guess that's just a stereotype. But
we're really good at hiding.
I'm listening to you, and I'm watching you, and I'm thinking, you make it all look so seamlessly easy. But we know that what you're doing right now, there's a lot of inner work happening to keep you looking this confident and this strong, I might say. And that's something that I'm always trying to remind parents, guardians, educators, and the youth, is that just because we look this way or we sound this way doesn't mean that we're feeling this way. So as you're doing this interview with me and you're being really honest, you're being vulnerable, what's it feeling like on the inside, knowing that in a couple of weeks, this will be published?
Look, I think probably all the things that I haven't said articulately enough that I wanted to get across. I'm always worrying that I could have put things in a better, clearer way. Worrying about rambling. There are a whole host of things going on inside me right now. So yeah, look, you're absolutely right. There are always inner battles. It's really interesting that you say that I come across as confident, because it's very rare that I feel that, but it has been a lifelong journey of my 42 years to get to the point where I would be comfortable to do something like this. So look, I suppose the message that I really want to give to anyone watching is, please don't ever give up. Please don't ever think that because you're struggling with something, whether it's a mental health issue, whether it's a health issue, whether it's just to do with the neighborhood that you grow up in, you can do whatever you want. You just have to believe in yourself. And to a point, you can still make steps to get there by almost faking it. And I say that in a way because that's what I've done my entire life. I've had a facade of probably coming across much more confidently than I actually am. But if you do it enough, if you put yourself in uncomfortable situations, those uncomfortable situations become more natural, and then you gain that self-belief. So yeah, look, I still feel a bit tickled that you've said that, because that really isn't how I feel most of the time. But yeah, it's a long journey, but it's definitely something that is so worthwhile. And when you start to see that you can achieve the goals that you really want, it's worth it. It's absolutely worth all of the struggling, all of the people that didn't believe in you, all of the people that made you feel that. And it's a really good feeling to just think, well, I'm owning this.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you for being with us today. And that brings us to the end of another incredible conversation. Today we spoke with Kat, who is living and working in Australia. And just before I say goodbye, if you are struggling with anxiety or feelings of mental health, please don't sit by yourself. Reach out. There are professionals, sociologists, psychologists, counselors, teachers, educators. Reach out to somebody. because there is somebody out there who can help you get through those challenging days. I'll see you all next week when we bring another guest to Strong.
Take my hand, just know